So it's like, if we want to be in this space and improve things for patients and dental professionals, we got to figure out a way to make this something that the patient wants in their mouth, that they won't say no to. When you go to this water-based coating, you can get all of the fluoride out that you put in the coating. We could never do that with the old sticky varnishes. We just got, we put 5% in, but we might only get 1% out. So now with Clinpro Clear, you're getting 2.1% out. So we can see, when we compare it to our old sticky varnishes, that this thing is outperforming leaps and bounds in only 15 minutes what our other varnishes could only do, in 4 hours minimum.
A tale of two hygienists.
And welcome back, listeners, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast. And in this special episode is brought to you by our friends and partner by Solventum. And I am your co-host, David Torres, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Ms. Jessica Atkinson. And Jess, please tell the listeners why today's guest is so special. What can you tell us about her?
As your partner in crime, we're going to be talking about something that some people think is criminal, and that's fluoride. I live in the state of Utah, and you live in the state of Florida, where fluoride is no longer in the water. And today, we have a special guest to talk about why it is criminal not to use fluoride. And we have with us today Jen Post, and we are so grateful that Jen is with us, as she is pretty phenomenal. Jen Post is an RDH, MDH, FADHA, and graduated from the University of South Dakota with degrees not only in dental hygiene, but in nursing and psychology as well. And Jen received her master's degree in dental hygiene from the University of Minnesota in 2013. She was previously an adjunct professor of dental hygiene at the University of Minnesota, where she lectured, worked hands-on with dental therapy, and dental hygiene students, and conducted research. She has been a licensed dental hygienist since 1999 and is a fellow of the American Dental Hygienists Association. Jen joined 3M, now Solventum, in 2016 and is currently an advanced clinical applications specialist for the restoratives and prevention lab within Solventum, where she is a subject matter expert and assures that dental products are useful and practical for dental professionals. In short, what that means is Jen, with her team, are inventors of things that make us as clinicians' lives much easier and make it easier for us to combat misinformation about our beloved fluoride. So Jen, give us a little bit of background on why you felt there needed to be a different approach to how we apply fluoride.
Well, when I was practicing clinically, I noticed a lot of patients will say no to fluoride. And, outside of the things that are going on now with people concerned about fluoride, there was just the actual application of the product. When I was in school, we gave every patient a gel fluoride treatment at the end of their appointment. And so that was
it the
in a
4
tray.
minutes?
You had to 4 minutes. It was torture.
Torture. It was gross.
There were patients you didn't even offer it to because you're like, this is pointless. I'm probably not going to even try.
I wasn't able to
with
get a
little kids.
radiograph without them gagging. They're not going to keep this in their mouth
Yeah,
for 4 minutes.
exactly. It doesn't matter if it's marshmallow flavor. They're not going to take it. So I noticed that. And I just think that was pretty pivotal for me, like seeing that, people can say no to a treatment like this. This isn't like a lot of things we use in the dental office where we don't get a lot of consultation with the patient about it. They don't care what prophy angles we use or what instruments we buy, but something like this that goes into their mouth and they experience it, it makes a big difference. And then as I went through practice, the fluoride varnishes really took hold. So those were the sticky coatings. Those were easy to apply to kids,
Yeah.
but kids still didn't like them.
As a clinician, I remember making the shift between a foam tray to gel tray. We had the gel
Mhm,
tray 4 minutes, foam 1 minute. That was great. But you looked at the research and you're like, that uptake is very minimal. And then
mhm.
on the stage comes this miracle product of varnish, and everyone hates it because
Yep.
it's ooey gooey sticky. You just spent however long making their teeth feel brand new and smooth, and then you go and place varnish, and a lot of
They
people said
hate it.
no. Yeah.
You know, I didn't really realize until I started working in product development, but what made those varnishes so sticky was pine sap. So
Mm.
that's what rosin is pine sap. So that's the base ingredient that most of these fluoride varnishes use to make it stick on the teeth. Because if you are going to use that type of product, a traditional varnish, it does need to be sticky. You need to hold it onto the teeth, and that's a great way to do it. But over time, there got to be about 50 fluoride varnishes on the market in the US alone. So it's like if we want to be in this space and improve things for patients and dental professionals, we got to figure out a way to make this something that the patient wants in their mouth, that they won't say no to anymore.
That they won't say no to just because of the experience, not because of the not because of the
Exactly.
benefits. I mean, that's another conversation we can talk
That's
about
a
too.
totally separate, conversation that I'm happy to have. But first we got to get them like to get this bad experience, off their plate. They
Well,
don't have to decide.
well, Jen, I'm gonna give you a confession. It seems like a lot of these episodes, like I'm confessing my sins, but I've went from believing in fluoride and doing the varnish on most of my patients to quite frankly getting a little agitated because I mean, Jess already said this. Like, we want to do a good job. We want to clean the patient's teeth. We want them to have an amazing experience. And I struggle with it a little bit because, and I'll tell you a quick story. I used to work in a dental office that was, it had two stores, right? So the second floor. And by the time I was putting my instruments to get sterilized in the lab, I had a window, and in that window, I could see the parking lot of the patients where they will park. And I quickly saw not one, not two, but multiple patients sit in their car after I did the cleaning and the varnish to just wipe it off. They will
Mhm,
literally get the visor down and just clean off the varnish. And I just thought it
mhm,
was wasteful. And I just thought if I can see them, if they can see me seeing them, they'll probably be in a panic mode, right? And so it became very difficult for me to continue to recommend this product because I knew they were just going to wipe it off anyway. So why should I waste their money? But then in one of the practices that I have, I see this new amazing product, which is the Clinpro Clear, and is water soluble and it goes on so smooth. And this is why I'm so excited to talk to you because you're thank you, lady. You just changed my whole
mhm.
entire way of practicing. Right? Is being able to like believe in it again, and being able to have our patients come in and not feel like their teeth are chalky again or dirty or plaquey again. So tell me a little bit more about this product because I must admit, by the time that I started using it, it was from a friend of a friend who was telling me try this, right? But that was a little hesitant because at the beginning I saw that we're used to the 5% varnish, and I noticed that with this specific product it has less than 5%. Can you
Mhm.
share a little bit more about that?
Definitely. So that's something we really considered carefully because we know that those 2013 American Dental Association fluoride guidelines they recommend the 5%. What we found though, because we've had at Solventum, we've had other fluoride varnishes. So we had sticky fluoride varnishes in the past. And what we found is that when you use a sticky coating like that, you need to basically overload the coating with fluoride so that you can get a certain amount out. Because most of them, you have to keep on your teeth for up to 24 hours,
Mhm.
and you rely on the patient's saliva to dissolve that sticky rosin coating and let the fluoride out. But when we started thinking about like, well, what would make this feel better on the patient's teeth, then we take out the rosin because that's what's making the teeth feel bumpy, sticky, chunky after they just got them cleaned. And we go to this water-based polymer, which the way I like to describe it, it really kind of mimics the pellicle layer on the tooth surface. So that's something that the patient's already used to, that feeling, that slick, smooth, clean feeling. And a really big benefit of this, and this was actually a very welcome surprise, is that when you go to this water-based coating, you can get all of the fluoride out that you put in the coating.
without having that
We
barrier.
could never do that with the old sticky varnishes. We just got, we'd put 5% in, but we might only get 1% out. So now with Clinpro Clear, you're getting 2.1% out. So we can see when we compare it to our old sticky varnishes that this thing is outperforming leaps and bounds in only 15 minutes what our other varnishes could only do, in 4 hours minimum. So, Dave, when you're talking about this patient going to their car and, scraping it off, well, guess what? It's done. 15 minutes. By the time they are out of your sight, they're probably got all the fluoride out already. It's okay to leave it on longer, but we can see very high uptake with this in just 15 minutes.
And they have
which I
nothing
think
to
is
scrape off.
right. They don't want to. Actually, I think this water-based polymer leaves their teeth even slicker, smoother, cleaner feeling than what we were doing as hygienists. So I think it's even better.
For
See,
me, what was difficult after a fluoride application was then to tell them, don't brush for as long as you possibly can. And, don't brush early morning, don't brush until tonight, don't brush until tomorrow morning. And I just spent how long with my oral hygiene education telling them that there are some areas that need more attention with a toothbrush, just to then turn around and say, not yet,
yeah, that's
not
such
yet.
a good
Yeah.
point. And I wanted to double click for the hygienist listening to this right now. You don't have to have a 5% quote unquote varnish with this product, right? Like it's more effective than the typical varnish because I don't know if I shared this with you, Jen, but my wife is also a hygienist and her and I started obsessing with the outcome of like which floor is best, what do we do? And we use the sample and her because of course we get busy in the day to day with patients and the schedule and all these things and trying to change something that you're used to is quite difficult. But when we came across this sample, her number one question was like, yeah, but it's not as effective as the typical fluoride. And my answer was, how do you know? Have we done enough research? How do you know that it's not as effective? Because I refuse to believe that we're going to update the things that we have and that we use for the worst, right? Like I believe I'm half full type of person. I'm super optimistic that if we're going to reinvent anything or we're going to modify anything, it's always going to be for the better because that's been my experience. And I challenge her a little bit on it. And that's why I'm challenging hygienists that are listening to this episode and saying, and understanding that not necessarily has to be a 5% for it to be as effective, if not more than effective than this Clinpro product Clear that we have.
And you don't have to wait till tomorrow to brush it off because it's just
Yes.
as effective in 15 minutes versus a 24-hour. Or what I'm hearing is that 4 hours was kind of the peak. And then depending on the varnish that you're using, they'll have more, longer or not as long to stay on the teeth for the optimal fluoride uptake.
Yeah, some of those we were testing out to like 24 hours because you could still see there's bits of that sticky coating interproximally or, places the patient didn't get it brushed off or picked off. That was still delivering fluoride. So some of the measurements would go out past 24 hours.
So
So
even in your research with going past 24 hours, were you finding that that first 15 minutes was outperforming the 24-hour mark?
yeah, we were getting really high
Ooh,
uptake.
ooh.
in 15 minutes. And the one thing that was important to me when we were testing is we wanted to go by the instructions that the manufacturer uses for their product. So for Clinpro Clear, we say 15 minutes. So we only want to show that because that's what we think is realistic. But for our other varnishes, we had to do it on the 4-hour basis. So then we measure the uptake after the product's been on whatever the manufacturer says it should be on. 15 minutes Clinpro Clear, 4 hours for Vanish Varnish. Yeah.
And
So it's like,
just a little pin in the fact that if you're using a product, make sure you read the instructions for use.
very important.
Yes.
I can't tell you how
No
often
joke.
I used
Yeah.
something without ever seeing the IFU. In fact, did I even know
Yeah.
what an IFU meant? Too long. And so you may be using a product that you are assuming or you're sharing with your patient it's going to be doing something, and it's not because you're not using it in the way that it was meant to be used. So thank you for bringing up IFUs, Jen.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that IFUs are regulated by the US FDA. So that is something that there's some guidelines there that you have to go by. And all the products are different. They all have different ingredients and directions. So
Not
very
all
important.
varnishes are the same. Not
They're not, even when there's 50 on the market, they are all acting a little differently.
And tell us a
So
little bit about how Clinpro Clear is acting differently, both on the patient experience level and also on the provider level. What is so different about it?
well, I think this patient experience, which we hear every day from patients who are like, I didn't used to take the fluoride and now I do. And I just think that really helps promote clinical excellence for the dental professional because maybe they won't be like sick of offering it like Dave was experiencing.
Mhm.
Or, they know they can get it on a kid's teeth or even people with sensory issues or just things that were kind of a barrier. We really are trying to take that barrier away. And so people say yes. Because if a patient is at risk, we want them to have a treatment. That's why we offered it.
Yes.
And if they say no, then, that short circuits it. So
And now that we have a product that isn't the barrier, that patient experience is not the barrier, how do you what words would you have for the practicing clinician to help combat some of this negative aura about this negative talk about
Mhm.
fluoride? So now we have a good product. We have a product that is going to be a much better experience for the patient, and now their concern is fluoride. Dave just texted me the other day with an experience that he had a patient express to him some concern. Dave, what was the patient's concern about fluoride?
Well, he flat out told me, guess what? Fluoride is radioactive. And I was like, what? I'll be honest with you, Jen.
Shoot.
I was like, my organic response was like, oh man, really? I was like, after 16 years, I must be glowing, huh? Because there's no way that, obviously, like it's hard not to combat these things that are happening. Maybe there's a patient spending too much time on Reddit or Facebook or the TikToks, right? Can you give us advice on how do we interact with our patients, or maybe have that healthy conversation with our patients on why is it that everything that we do is to promote preventive health and to promote the best things that we can do for them? Nothing we do is to harm them. How do we have a conversation? How can hygienists have conversations with their patients when it comes to them thinking that fluoride could be a poison or whatever crazy things we're hearing nowadays?
I think that's really important. And what I think we have to do as hygienists is meet patients where they are with that. We don't know what information they had. Are they reading academic studies or are they going down a Reddit rabbit hole? And so this is where we whip out the motivational interviewing and
I see
really
this
try to
educator in
find out.
you. I like this.
Yeah, we gotta, you know, like, where's this coming from? Because then you can combat it. Because if you just like, here's my standard fluoride's not poison speech, that's not going to hit the same with everybody because it depends on what they saw. Oh, tell me about what you read and where you read it. And, how do you think fluoride works? And they can tell you some things, or where do you think fluoride comes from? And they'll all say it's a waste product of manufacturing or something like that. But, actually fluoride comes from the earth. Fluorine is the 13th most abundant element in the Earth's crust.
So maybe I
So
need like a periodic table in my office.
that would not hurt with the fluoride circled. Healthy teeth
Oh,
here.
arrows.
Um, yeah.
Jen, I'm so glad you said that because that gives me so much reassurance. I mean, I do try to meet my patients where they're at, right? I don't want to scold them. I have a relationship with them. I mean, the
hmm
verbiage that I have used that has worked well is, well, Mrs. Jones, I don't want you to do anything you don't feel comfortable doing, right? But I mean, you were referred to me by your family member and they trust me. And I want to do everything within my power to make sure that I can prevent even more dentistry. And I will never do anything that would be harmful for you. With that said, show me where you're getting this information because it is my job as your dental professional to get to know everything there is to know about fluoride because those are the things that I recommend. And so being able to kind of hear what you just said to be able to meet the patient halfway, I think is so impactful. And I want a hygienist to hear this conversation and think about the patient that they had in chair in that moment and their relationship because there's a reason why they're seeing you, right? There's a reason why they have the recare appointment with you. And even if it's a brand new patient, chances are we may not do the floor the first time around, but eventually as we build the recare appointments, you start talking to them about the type of care that you want to provide. And oftentimes, I know that the hygienist listening to this right now, they mean well, not harm. And that's the message that we want to be able to create for that patient.
Something I really think about with that too is sometimes patients are resistant because they just feel like we're trying to sell them
Mhm.
something. And, most of the time we're using like a risk-based, method to recommend something like this.
Mhm.
It's because we see risk in their mouth. And I think it can go a long way to say, this is important to me and I know it works. And I'd like to offer you one at no charge today
Oh, I love that.
because I think it would really benefit you today. And then maybe next time they don't feel as confrontational about it, or they got to try it free of charge. And then next time they might start asking for it.
Because you've addressed
So
that
it's like,
misconception that you're just trying to sell them something. You is
that's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like you can also address that misconception by letting your patient know the assessments that you are providing. I, as a
hmm
patient, was never told that I was doing a caries risk assessment. I was never informed that the questions that I was being asked was helping my provider make a determination on what risk I was for future decay. So letting your patients in on what you're doing and saying, "Hey, this I'm going to have you answer a few questions so we can determine what your caries risk is and find out what we can do to uh, best care for you." And so the misconception of th- dentistry is just trying to sell you something, or the misconception that fluoride is a waste product. What are some other misconceptions that you find in this conversation space that you could give us some direction on how to address?
I think absolutely any disease you can think of, people are tying to fluoride exposure, from sexual
Mhm.
dysfunction to diabetes
Teen
to
pregnancy.
brain cancer. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did. I said my there was a study that it had, and I was like, where'd you get this?
Yeah. Like correlation is not causation.
No.
And I'm also interested in the correlation on that.
Right.
But
I'm like,
yeah, it's just been like I'm almost any disease, people think like that's just an easy target because that's in the environment. But I mean, if people would stop and think about this, it's like people have been poisoned from drinking too much water because they're running a marathon and they their
Dilute.
electrolytes are
Mhm.
out of balance, or people die from sugar every day with, diseases that causes. So it's kind of like, I think there's some misunderstanding about what fluoride is, what it does, where it is, where it comes from. And I think a lot of it's not fair when we could point to other things that probably are more problematic.
Mhm.
But that's why we just have to meet people where they are, because a judgy conversation about this isn't going to help at all. But I think, Jessica, to your point, like looking, well, where did you hear that? Tell me about that. And what do you think the motivation was for the article you read? Or did they have a point of view? Or, kind of just
Helping our patients be better consumers of information and of
exactly.
products. I think that that
Hmm.
could be really, really helpful. And as we offer them fluoride, how do you explain to patients on how fluoride works? And I want to talk a little bit more because you're an inventor and a scientist and all of those wonderful things. What always helps me is the amount of research we have on the efficacy of fluoride. Give us a little more
Hmm.
information about that.
Well, you guys probably know that, it really took off in the 40s when they noticed when communities had naturally high fluoride in their water system, that the people in those communities had much less decay.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of where this whole thing started of like, oh, maybe we should add fluoride to the water, or maybe there's fluoride benefits, to people using it every day. But to go back, take a step back of the science of it, your teeth are made out of calcium and phosphate. And that is a structure called hydroxyapatite. And that is just the natural structure with no fluoride added. What we can see is when we add fluoride to calcium and phosphate, we actually change the mineral into something much harder and much more acid resistant. So calcium and phosphate on their own in our tooth enamel, they're not very stable. So that calcium and fluoride or phosphate can get away. So when if you drink a Coke, have an acidic diet, that actually strips the minerals of your tooth away. And if you have that over and over and over and then they don't recover, then that's how we get caries. But if your teeth are hard and that calcium and phosphate mineral is stable on the tooth, and the best thing we'd have to do that is fluoride. Fluoride in that matrix makes the tooth hard, much more acid resistant and much more resistant to decay. And one thing I think people don't realize is, even though we still see pretty high caries rates in general in the world, it would be even higher without fluoride in our municipal water systems, without using fluoride toothpaste every day. So fluoride is a secret ingredient.
See, that's such a good point because I mean, thinking back, like I started practicing like 16 years ago, but even back then, it was more common to have partials, dentures, bridges, where it was common for 20, 30 years ago for Mima to have dentures, right? Because even
Mm-hmm.
my father didn't know that he could keep his teeth for the rest of his life, right? And so now we have our tools, things like fluoride, our conversations with our hygienists and patients, where we can say, yeah, dentures went out of style. And here's how we're going to make sure that we prevent you needing any extensive dentistry like this. And also encouraging, and again, the hygienist listening to this, just think about, and I want to circle back just for a little bit about us sounding salesy, because I used to get very offended when a patient will tell me like, "Oh, you can sell ice to an Eskimo," or you must be doing amazing in commissions and sales and all that stuff. And I would be like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" But nowadays I'm more like, "Well, how much is one filling?" If a patient had to guess how much one filling, and it could range from 100 to 200 to 300. What about a 2, 3 surface filling, a crown, an implant? And if we're really salesy, then why is it that preventive dentistry is so affordable, right? And so I always have the conversation with a patient. I was like, look, you just finished seeing Doc in the other side of the office, and they did a crown. I can't think of anything better than to protect this crown, because nothing lasts forever, than kind of doing your own little insurance, right? Which is preventive services like seeing me frequently and allowing me to do fluoride treatment so that I can maximize the longevity of that crown. Because if you thought that was expensive, imagine having to do a root canal now.
Or an
Or
extraction and implant.
Mhm.
Yeah, guess what the next step of
Mhm.
this is? I like that approach because, you know, people get expensive, dental restorative care. And then our next question should be, now how are you going to take care of that?
Mhm.
Oh,
The average lifespan of one of these is 5 years. So how can we make it longer? We got to keep it clean. We got to
what
keep
does
it
the
healthy.
IFU say about care? That's my question. What does the IFU say? What material are you using in my mouth? And I think as practitioners, that's somewhere that we can improve. Is what is the material that's been used in our patient's mouth? How do we help them know how to better care for it? And how do we better care for it? By using products like Clinpro Clear, or using products that were once something that we didn't want to use because they weren't so great, but some amazing hygienist said, I got an idea. We can make this a better experience, and changed it. So now that we have a product that is a lot easier, a lot better, and can help prolong the health of our patients over time. So thank you, Jen.
What if we fix this?
Yes, what if we fix it?
this?
Yeah, what if we fix it? And
I'm ready to do this again. I got more ideas. I'm ready to do the next thing.
Jen, I love that.
I think there's
And I think that's a really great place for us to land today and end for our listeners to go, if I have an idea, I can take the steps to make this experience better, and I can make a change for my patients. So thank you, Jen. We appreciate you, and thanks for being an inventor extraordinaire.
Thank you guys.
Welcome.
And Jen, thank you for giving us the ability to have amazing products for our patients, and everything you just said. I hope it resonates with our listeners, because it's true. Oftentimes we get a little frustrated at work and complaining about things and why is fluoride so sticky, when it turns out that there's better products out there, right? And so it's up to us to look for the new and best things so that we can recommend for our patients. Because in my career, being able to kind of develop the relationship that I have with my patients and be responsible for them to be able to prevent another toothache or dental emergency feels pretty good, right? And so, Jen,
Mhm.
thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope that you continue to feel inspired as you have to create even better products. Let us know how we can help you. But absolutely, it's been an amazing conversation. And listeners, go out there, try this stuff for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it, but try it out, get some samples. I guarantee you it will change, at the very least, your patient's experience in their parking lot.
That's excellent. Yes.
That's a wrap on today's episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast. If this conversation made you feel seen, inspired, or even just a little fired up, share it with a fellow hygienist or fellow dental professional. Share it with your neighbors, your friends. Share it with everyone. That is how this community grows.
Make sure you subscribe, leave us a review, and connect with us on social media so that we can keep on going with this conversation. Remember, your career, your voice, and your story matter here. We're David.
And Jessica,
And until next time.
keep learning, keep laughing, and keep showing up for yourself and for each other.
This has been a production of Endeavor Business Media, a division of Endeavor B2B.